idea is that they give the facts as they are and not making judgment on them.
Matter of the implementation of the text of the Constitution.
Did we just wake up to find out that we had become a unitary state? Was it something that...
What happened to a child, Southern Cameroon?
I think it's really sad that in 2017 we're still talking about being the kids of the British or the French.
Today, you take that message to your peers. And
real change doesn't come from within here, it comes from outside.
When people get angry, they become radicalized. We know that.
I think you should be proud to be a Cameroonian, an African.
Can His Excellency give me a definition of genocide?
because Cameroonians are not truthful. This is the time to start talking the truth.
We are not here to open a new avenue for negotiation and debate. I think it's been done in Cameroon.
Under the federal constitution, education was within the competence of the federated states. Higher education within the competence of the federation. So each state kept its own educational system. Now, in terms of language, something which perhaps is worth noting is that the federal constitution rightly declared that the official languages of the Federal Republic of Cameroon were English and French. That was correct. So it declared that. But Article 59 of that constitution said that the constitution was to be published in English and French. But see, the important bit that the French version was to be the authentic version. Meaning that in the case of a dispute, a conflict between the English version of the Constitution and the French version of the Constitution, the French version will prevail. But nevertheless, we had two legal systems. Those legal systems were protected under the Federal Constitution because the Federal Constitution did say that the laws that were in force in each of the federated states would remain in force, continue, with one proviso. Provided, it says there, to the extent that those laws were not contrary to the federal constitution. So it means that the common law system of Southern Cameroon was preserved, and the civil law system of what was then East Cameroon was also preserved. And I think that under that system, both federated states operated well, and each state was happy with its own legal system. And I think that under that system, both federated states operated well, and each state was happy with its own legal system. The educational system was also separate. Each one kept its own. As I mentioned earlier, education was within the competence, jurisdiction of the federated states, but higher education was within the competence of the federation. And so there was only one at that time, a single federal university, which was in Yaoundé. And it was right that that should be the case within the context of the Constitution, which gave competence to the Federal Republic. Now, the Yaoundé University was a bilingual university. There are issues, those who have been there, like me, know what bilingualism in that university meant. Perhaps during discussions later on. So the two federated states carried on for some time. And what you see there is a list of the prime ministers of the federated state of West Cameroon. The first one here, Ndele, was our first premier. He was premier before the Federal Republic was born. But the famous John Nguekam was the first premier under the Federal Republic. And then you have the other two, Augustine Bonjour and Solomon Kandeh, who was the last premier of the Federated State of West Cameroon. East Cameroon also had its own premiers, and there's the list. I'm afraid I couldn't find the photographs. They are on photographs, so you don't have that. But they had 3 different premiers as well during the time of the Federation from 1961 to 1972. And then, the next slide, what you see is a list of presidents that we have had in Cameroon since 1961. So I pass on that without further comment. What then happened in 1972 is that there was a move. The federal constitution was abolished and the state was transformed, the form of the state was transformed from a federal state to a unitary state. And that happened by means of a referendum which took place on the 20th of May, 1972. So we then moved from the Federal Republic of Cameroon to a United Republic of Cameroon. The United Republic of Cameroon was a single centralized form of government where all authority and power was now concentrated in the hands of a strong president. An executive run by the president, and power in the state was concentrated in the hands of the president under that constitution. And so things moved on until the form of the state was again changed, at least this time in the name, from the United Republic of Cameroon to the Republic of Cameroon. So we've gone full circle almost. And we're back to 1960, when one part of Cameroon was called the Republic of Cameroon. So that happened in 1984 by means of a constitutional amendment which was adopted by Parliament and promulgated by the President. I found an explanation given for this change. This explanation was given by the Secretary General at the National Assembly at the time. He gave this explanation to an interparliamentary group at that time, international group at that time. He says that, you see the quotation, that the amendment, the purpose of the amendment was to get rid of the ambiguity in the appellation, United Republic of Cameroon, by adopting the more prestigious name, Republic of Cameroon. Yes, this stresses the one and indivisible nature of the nation. That was the purpose of that change. And that revision of the Constitution in 1996 touched on the form of the state again. But this time it touched on the form of the state and did a number of things. One of them was to decentralize power. So it's a form of devolution of power. It was to take power from the center to the regions. So that constitution created regional authorities at the levels of what was previously provinces, now regions. These authorities would be run by people who were elected, who will be elected. The authorities will then elect their president. The word used in the Constitution is president. There will be a president of a regional council. And that president would be the highest official in that region, be the executive official in that region. Now, regions would have powers in certain areas, would have competence in certain areas. You see the constitutional amendment in 1996. The problem is that that part of the Constitution has not yet been implemented. Take, for example, on the use of language. Language have equal status. What does that mean? How does that work in practice? Well, Anglophone Cameroonians complain that in practice it has not worked the way it is stated in the Constitution, and that Anglophones have been the victims of injustice and even discrimination in the use of the language, and that this fact that French is used mostly is something that is not just a matter of preferring one language to the other. It has implications, for example, in the educational sector. If children are being taught, English-speaking children are being taught by people who cannot speak English because their first language is French, that has implications for the performance of these students. In the legal sector, the judicial sector, if you have judges who are French-speaking, dispensing justice to citizens and litigants who are English-speaking, then you have a problem of justice there. So injustice at that level is something which Anglophones have been complaining about for a very long time.
So thank you very much. And the next speaker is going to be as powerful as well as the professor. And she's going to be telling us what actually the problem is as of today. We are in the United Kingdom, we are in the diaspora. We get information by WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and all sorts of things. Some of them are correct, some of them are not. So Dr. Quenty has spent some time researching what actually happened, and she's going to be stating the facts as the professor did. The idea is that they give the facts as they are and not making judgment on them. The judgment or the debate, discussion by
a quick history of where the lawyers and the teachers are, because they were the ones who kick-started the current unrest. Way back in May 2015, the lawyers had a meeting in Bamenda. It was the first inaugural conference of the Cameroon lawyers of the common law. And they kind of listed a whole raft of things that they were really unhappy about. That's captured, that's evidence, and some of you in here will have that information. They were concerned about the admissions in the law school, the Common Law Bar Association, the bench of the Supreme Court, and the bench of the National School of Administration and Magistracy, ENAM, as we used to call it when I was in Yale. It's still the same, I'm sure. Right, so they had that meeting, and they presented, they came up with a memo. You have a meeting, you have your concerns, so you send it to someone. They send it to the Prime Ministry, asking that these issues be addressed. They send it to the Senate, the Bar Council, the Ministry of Justice, National Assembly, the US Embassy, Canadian Embassy, and the Nigerian High Commissioner. Maybe that list is longer, but that's what I could pull out. And guess what? It took a while. Nobody said anything. But February 2016, they had another meeting in Boya and drew up the Boya Declaration. So on the 6th of October, again in another meeting in Bamenda, they decided to go on strike. This started very peacefully. But the two key things they asked when they were going on strike was that a commission of inquiry, be created, and a core commission to listen where they could raise these issues again. And they were asking specifically that if you train a magistrate in civil law, deploy them to the jurisdiction where that's practiced, similar with common law, because that was becoming a serious problem in the different jurisdictions in Cameroon. Moving on to the teachers, it's a similar problem. The deployment, like again the professor alluded to, you educate people in a particular language, then you send them, to an area where they can't teach those kids. They can't express anything. So the bilingualism didn't work at the time.
It is not a protest meeting. I'm urging you, please.
So you look at the teachers, you look at the common law lawyers, their grievances have not been acknowledged as far as we are concerned. They've not been listened to, nor have anything acted upon. what are the Southern Cameroonians asking for? For me, when I asked myself that question in preparation for today, I thought the immediate thing is to stop brutalizing people. They have a right to ask that things should change. Stop the beating, stop the arrest, stop the detention. But because of the history of Southern Cameroons, you all are aware, if you're not aware, I'll be wondering where you're coming from, that you've got factions who are asking for total separation, cessation, and those that are saying maybe we should go back to the federated state. So that is where we are. But for me, the immediacy is stop the brutalization. When people get angry, they become radicalized. We know that. We know that only too well. And we know Boko Haram has been circling around these areas. Do we want more trouble in the world? Do we want people to start moving around and stay in refugee camps? Why are we bringing this problem to the UK government? Because we've had that relationship. Again, the professor alluded to that history. You know, our culture, our people, you know, the way our education system, our legal system is tied with this place where we are today. So that's why we felt very, very strongly when we were invited to say, come and ask for some support. We all felt that it was something to do. What are we asking? Please make a public statement on human rights abuse in Southern Cameroon. Ask the government to stop the brutalization of unarmed civilians during peaceful demonstrations. We should at least ask the UK government to help us with that.
I am going to invite His Excellency, the acting High Commissioner, Mr. Nguekam, to say a few words as to what the government is doing to try to resolve the current unrest in Cameroon. Mr. Nguekam, first.
Fellow Cameroonians in the diaspora, member of the British Parliament, dear friends of Cameroon. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer of this event for organizing this meeting for us to kind of dialogue and talk about what is happening in Cameroon. I would also like to thank the friends of Cameroon for coming today and to show their interest in our country first. It's our intent to pursue our government communication efforts as well as to listen to the diaspora and report back. It should be said at the beginning of this conversation that we are not here to open a new avenue for negotiation and debate. I think it's been done in Cameroon. So here at the High Commission, we are just here to kind of channel the message of government and to receive what the Cameroonian community in the UK is saying about the situation and to inform government about it. I would not like to go back to the history of what happened. We heard the two previous speakers who spoke lengthily about the situation. I just want to say that when this event started unfolding, government was open for negotiation and there were many meetings. The head of government himself, Prime Minister H.E.M, went to Bamenda on several occasions to lead the government bench in the negotiation. During the negotiation, there were some commitment by the trade unions to call off the strike if some key points were answered by government. Just recently, we decided to create a national commission on promotion of bilingualism and multiculturalism in Cameroon, which has the responsibility for submitting a report and a recommendation relating to the protection and promotion of bilingualism and multiculturalism to the President of the Republic and the government, and to monitor the implementation of constitutional provision establishing English and French as two official languages of equal status, and every citizen has all the constitutional right to express his opinion on all aspects of national life, including through duly declared peaceful strike action. The President also affirmed that a long-lasting solution to our problem can only be found through peaceful avenues. And that said, nothing can ever justify violence and atrocity of all kinds or a confrontational attitude toward the authority of the country. From the time the agreement for the two states to come together were made, the promises that were made, the agreements that were got into, and how have they been followed up? How have they been achieved?
7 years to the date of the union. And point number, the next point, the union, the state of the union, clearly stated in white and black, was never to be tampered with. Is that clear? Everybody knows that. Now, this is not the time for face saving. I want to appreciate the government for one thing. They came here and wanted us to contribute. And what we did was face saving, because we don't want to be on TVs, to be presented in Cameroon to be killed. Now that I know my path, let's know this. In 1993, the government did a good thing. Two things they did. 1993 did a good thing called the English educated lawyers. Kasana Nyangwe, Simon Munzu, Dr. Ella. Let's have a conversation. Their contributions were swept aside in the end. And the Prime Minister came here, or sent the Foreign Minister to come here. And each time he came, we were asking questions such as computerizing schools, removing things in the port. We were not asking genuine questions. When I asked the question about the permanency of electum structures and buildings versus the once upon a time nature of elections, people were booing. Because Cameroonians are not truthful. This is the time to start talking the truth. Thank you.
Can His Excellency give me a definition of genocide and why has there been the cut-off of the internet services? I think we've dealt with it.
Did we just wake up to find out that we had become a unitary state? Was this something that the Southern Cameroonians had the option to actually accept?
And he's an Englishman, he's probably going to explain to us what it means by independence by joining. When we went to join Nigeria or the French Republic of Cameroon, to depend on them for independence, or we're going to, I don't seem to understand what it means by independence by joining. It doesn't make any sense at all.
No, not you, they're alone. Any of you in here would think the government is taking good decisions to solve these problems? Put your hands up. Any of you here would think nothing is being done effectively to resolve this problem? Put your hands up. Thank you.
And all true. Do you believe we have a system in place where Anglophones of English-speaking Cameroonians can be able to fit in?
Can you just explain why in Cameroon we've got 10 regions and I think we've got 10 governors in Cameroon? And why is it that we don't have a single Anglophone as a governor in Cameroon?
The representatives of the teachers and the representatives of the lawyers. You can turn around, arrest all of them, send the military to West Cameroon, and disconnect the internet. If you have nothing to hide, and you want the facts to come out for people to see, I find it very difficult to see how this is acting in good faith.
So how Cameroon to self-governance and independence. Now, or I think about West Cameroon, or rather Southern Cameroon. Now, those two, they don't go hand in hand. Southern Cameroon had self-governance. They had ending before independence. So let's not get the two mixed up. But I'll leave that aside. And my question is to you, John. Today we stand in the house of history. Today you see people who are concerned in the hundreds, some still outside. The question is, you and I know as parents, well, I'm assuming that you are a parent, but when you bring a child up, you make a decision about how you bring that child. If you think you cannot do it, you get that child to be adopted. But in the case of Southern Cameroon, Cameroon was entrusted to Britain prior to colonialism. But what happened? You were supposed to see Cameroon to independence. What happened to a child, Southern Cameroon? What happens to a child? Even the parent who gives away a child turns around and says, where is that child after a while? Today is your day. Today, you take that message to your peers and ask the question.
People have asked about how you influence the government. I mean, I've got to tell you, I haven't got a magic wand. We're not in government, we lost the election. I mean, it pains me to say it, but we did lose the election. The notion that was put forward earlier on that somehow Britain is like the parent and Cameroon is the child, well, I don't think I'd particularly like to pursue that idea. Whether the government, any government actually, will take... Yeah, 2 minutes, please. Whether any government actually would take that much notice of Boris Johnson, I'm not absolutely sure. We don't take much notice of him around here, so it probably doesn't apply to other countries. However, what I would say is this: if you want to bring something to the attention of ministers, contact your own MPs and say you need to write to the minister. I'll be doing that, and we will have other meetings in the future. Julius and I will organise another meeting at some point in the next few, I don't know, months, whatever, whenever you want to have it. I'll book a room and we'll have another meeting like this. But in the meantime, look, let me be absolutely frank. It's not going to achieve anything standing up and saying to a backbench MP like me, who sits on the opposition benches, who might ask questions every day and might vote against the government every day, but nevertheless doesn't have a lot of power, right, well, you get the government to do something. It ain't going to work. Real change doesn't come from within here, it comes from outside. Everything that's really changed, and that includes the independence of former colonies, does not erupt in here. When Harold Macmillan made his Winds of Change speech, which led to the independence of countries like Cameroon and other countries in Africa and in the Caribbean, it didn't happen because he just waved a magic wand. It happened because there was pressure in Britain and in what were then the colonies. That brought pressure to bear on the government and on the Prime Minister. But it comes from outside Parliament. Parliament doesn't just make laws. Parliament reflects what's going on in the wider society and in the wider world. That's how the poll tax collapsed, because there was pressure from outside. It didn't happen by magic. We didn't get the National Health Service. We didn't get rights at work. We didn't get trade unions, we didn't get equal pay for women, we didn't get women MPs in here because it happened because the powers that be decided it'd be a good idea. It happened because of pressure from outside. And getting them to lobby the government, that's what I'm asking you to do.
My name is H.E.M, and I just attend the meeting about the issues in southwest of Cameroon. Is when I hear people ask one of the British Parliament representatives that English-speaking part of Cameroon is like a kid for the British, and they have to do something to help them achieve whatever. I think it's really sad that in 2017 we're still talking about being the kids of the British or the French or whoever. I think you should be proud to be a Cameroonian, an African. I think you should find a solution in our own culture and history. And you have wondering why, instead of focusing on who speak English or who speak French, why we don't try to find like a common national language for the future.
I mean, what is very important is that, this was a very fundamental conference which was held by Cameroonians at the House of Commons. And I think, what is very clear is that, the problem of marginalization which has been raised, it is a matter of implementation of the constitution which exists already. The 1972 constitution in Cameroon has implemented, has actually asked that, the Anglophone and the Francophone system have to be equally implemented. So I think what the outcome of this conference is that they have to call on the government to ensure that those who are supposed to implement the demands of the constitution should be able to do so. The problem of the issue of the Southern Cameroons, or calling themselves the Anglophones and the Francophones, is a matter of implementation of the constitution that already exists, giving equal rights and equal power to the French and the English system.